Letters of recommendation. So the first question when talking about law school letters of recommendation is what makes a good letter of recommendation? And the answer is praise supported by specific examples. The key there is the specific examples, right? Law schools are more interested in the evidence backing the positive assertions up than they are in the assertions themselves. As one law school admissions dean put it, anecdotes, not just adjectives. As far as who should write your letters of recommendation, generally speaking, you need two academic references. If you've been out of school for more than a few years, then you could get away with having maybe one professor. If you've been out of school for 10 plus years, then you're probably not going to have an academic reference. It's probably going to be professional, but certainly for anyone in college or anyone who's recently graduated from college, you need two academic references plus, and that's up to you. Most schools allow up to four. So people often include their employer if they've been out of school for a couple of years, maybe an intern supervisor, maybe just a mentor, a sort of character reference. But that would be in addition to the two professors. Ask for recommendations from the professors who know you best. Class subject is not as important as your class performance. In fact, I'd say class subject is not important at all. Also, don't pick someone just because she's famous or well-published. One kind of letter of recommendation that law schools absolutely hate is what I'll call the celebrity letter of recommendation. Maybe the senator in whose office you interned who writes 2 or 3 boilerplate lines about you and then signs the recommendation. Law schools will rip that up and throw it away. Go with someone who actually knows you well. When you ask for a letter of recommendation, don't be shy about reminding that person of your accomplishments. So, for example, to break it down, when someone agrees to write your letter of recommendation, you follow up with an email saying, here's where you send the letter, things like that. In that email, you could say something along the lines of, after having researched what law schools look for in applicants, I think it would be helpful if you mentioned, and then bullet points, right? I got this grade in your class. I wrote this paper, the thesis was this. If the person ever emailed you comments, find those emails, forward them back to the reference. If you still have handwritten feedback on pieces of paper that you turned in and then received back, scan them. Give the reference all the information that he or she needs to write you a detail-oriented letter of recommendation. People often ask, what should the reference say? So professors should assess your accomplishments, then decide how to praise you. And this goes for work supervisors as well. So in other words, your work should guide their adjectives, their praise, not some vague idea of what law schools are looking for. The reference shouldn't say, what's a law school looking for? Answer that question, and then try to come up with work that supports that letter. Instead, the reference should look at your work, say this work leads me to the conclusion that this person is a hard worker, a great writer. And that's what the letter should be about. People often say, well, what are law schools looking for? And the answer is everything. I think the only clear guidance is that the Law School Admission Council has noted that letters that compare you to your academic peers are often the most useful. That's essentially saying if you can find someone who will say, Georgetown students are smart, but this person is even smarter, obviously that's great. You're not always going to find that, right? You might not know people well enough for them to say that. That's fine. The bottom line is you need enthusiastic praise, and the praise needs to be supported by evidence.